There are times in life when you just know something about you feels different. It's like there's a quiet voice inside, softly nudging you, telling you that you don't quite experience the world like everyone else does. You've probably struggled to put it into words. Maybe you still can't. And the truth is, it's not something you ever asked for or decided. It's just always been there. You see life through a different lens, one that notices what others miss, where silence holds stories, and the ordinary reveals something extraordinary. While most people move through the world, barely noticing the little things, you pick up on them instinctively. To you, silence isn't empty, it's filled with meaning. It echoes louder than all the noise. You can tell when someone's hurting, even if they hide it behind laughter or a carefully crafted smile. You feel the weight of their sadness as if it were your own, even when not a single word is spoken. You didn't choose to carry this sensitivity. It's simply a part of who you are. And in many ways, it always has been. Carl Jung once said that extraordinary souls aren't shaped by comfort. They're forged in the quiet, burning fire of deep self-reflection. And maybe that's the missing piece. Maybe that's why, even when you were just a kid, you often felt like you didn't quite fit in. As if your spirit didn't fully belong to this world, like it originated from some distant place or another time entirely. While others chased after noise and distraction, you instinctively turned inward. While the world was busy looking outward, your attention was pulled toward the vast, mysterious space within yourself. And that inner journey, while powerful, came at a price. It brought with it a kind of loneliness that ran deep, a quiet ache that never really left. It wasn't the absence of people that made you feel alone. It was the sense that no one truly got you. No one seemed to understand how deeply you feel things, how intensely you experience life. But here's the truth. That sensitivity of yours, that emotional richness, it's not a flaw. It's not something to be silenced, hidden, or fixed. It's a signal. A quiet reminder that there's something rare within you. A soul. And not just any soul, but one that sees beyond the surface, that feels the truth without needing words. A soul that was born to sense more, to understand more, to carry wisdom that can't be taught. You carry a soul that senses what others overlook. A soul tuned to invisible frequencies, picking up on truths that most people ignore. There's an ancient knowing within you, something timeless that lives quietly in your chest. Maybe you haven't found the words for it yet, but you feel it. It's real. It burns gently, always there. If you've ever felt like you're too much, too emotional, too intense, too introspective, it's not because something's wrong with you. It's because the world hasn't yet learned how to hold the depth of souls like yours. But let this sink in. You are not broken. You are not lost. You're awake, living in a world that, in many ways, is still asleep. And when a soul begins to awaken, even if the world doesn't shift immediately, something around it always starts to change. Having a soul like yours means life touches you more deeply. Not because you're weak, but because your sensitivity allows you to see what others miss. You read between the lines. You feel what isn't said. You don't just hear what people say, you feel them. You pick up on their energy, their sadness, their silent yearning. Their pain doesn't simply pass through you. It takes root in your heart, as if it were your own. Quietly, without asking for recognition, you carry the weight of emotions that others are too afraid to even name. Chances are, the world has labeled you too sensitive. Maybe they've told you to toughen up, to stop overthinking, to stop feeling so much. But what they don't realize is, this isn't something you can switch off. And more importantly, you shouldn't. This depth of feeling, this intensity, it's not a flaw. It's a hidden gift. A powerful blessing disguised as a burden. Carl Jung once said that to find your light, you must first face your shadow. And you've stood in the storm of your own inner world. You've faced questions, doubts, and darkness that most people would run from. You've sat with your own silence, searching for purpose while the world kept moving. You've known what it feels like to carry a heavy emptiness, the kind that sits quietly in your chest and refuses to let go. You've asked yourself, again and again, what's the point of all this? And yet, you're still here, still searching, still feeling, still listening to that quiet voice inside. That's your soul speaking. And not everyone can hear theirs. Most people drown that voice out. They bury it beneath noise, distractions, or the masks they wear. But you didn't. You chose to stay with the silence, even when it hurt. You allowed yourself to feel instead of run. You've come to understand something powerful. Wounds aren't meant to be ignored or denied. They're meant to be seen, honored, and healed. Because pain doesn't disconnect you from who you are, it leads you back to your truth. Your soul is rare, because it made the brave choice, the choice to feel. Your soul made a choice, a bold one. It chose not to go numb. It chose to wake up. And yes, awakening can hurt. It's not always beautiful at first. Sometimes, it feels like walking a path no one else can see. But that path, lonely as it may seem, is sacred. In a world that constantly runs from inner truth, you chose to go deeper. While many chase answers in the noise of the outside world, you had the courage to close your eyes and turn inward. To ask the questions that only a soul dares to ask. Who am I? Why am I here? What does it really mean to live with truth and integrity? You may not have all the answers yet, and that's okay. Because the act of asking already places you in rare company. It doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're finding your way home to something real. A special soul isn't measured by its achievements. It's defined by its capacity to transform, to turn pain into wisdom, and depth into light. Every time you chose forgiveness instead of holding on to resentment, every time you let yourself cry when the world expected you to stay strong, every time you opened your heart, knowing full well it might be broken, you were stepping into your real power. Your soul doesn't crave attention. It doesn't need applause or approval. It simply is, resonating on a frequency that most can't hear. And yes, sometimes that frequency can feel lonely, but it's never wrong. In truth, it's exactly the kind of energy this world desperately needs. So even if you've often felt like you don't belong, take a moment to notice this. You're finally starting to belong to yourself. You were never meant to blend in. You were born to awaken, to evolve, to spark something ancient and beautiful in others, reminding them of the parts of themselves they've forgotten. Jung once said, "A life not lived is a disease from which one can die." And you, even if you've hidden away at times, even if you've gone quiet, know this: there is still life burning inside you, waiting to be lived. There's a fire that never truly went out. There's a light in you that, no matter how bruised or broken, refuses to dim. Your soul isn't special just because it feels different. It's special because it carries a purpose. A quiet mission etched deep within you. It's a calling that goes beyond words, beyond logic, beyond what the eyes can understand. And it doesn't always show up in bold gestures or loud declarations. Sometimes, it's as simple and as sacred as choosing compassion when anger feels easier, as choosing presence when the world pulls you to escape. Sometimes, it's as simple as speaking the truth, even when silence would be easier. As beautiful as truly seeing someone when the rest of the world looks right through them. It's often hidden in the smallest details. Like the way you sit with someone in their pain, saying nothing but being fully present. The way you listen, not to respond, but to understand. The way you create space for others when they've forgotten how to create it for themselves. That's where your true essence quietly shines. And maybe no one ever clapped for that. Maybe you've never been praised, recognized, or even thanked. But your soul was never looking for applause. It doesn't need approval to feel whole. What it seeks, always, is truth. When you carry a soul that's wired differently, you can't just walk the roads everyone else has mapped out. Those paths never truly fit. You grow weary of all the noise, the surface-level chatter, the pressure to squeeze yourself into roles that were never made for you. You're not moved by hollow praise or meaningless gestures. There's something deeper inside you, something that's always been searching for what's real, for something genuine, meaningful, and undeniably your own. But let's be honest, this journey hasn't been simple. Because the more awake you become, the more clearly you start to see how asleep the world actually is. You begin to notice the cracks beneath the surface, the contradictions people ignore, the silent pain hiding beneath smiles, the emptiness behind what society often calls success. You've seen it, fear dressed up as ambition, disconnection passed off as just the way things are. But no matter how hard you try, you can't fake it. You've tried though. You've made the effort to adapt, to blend in, to follow the rules and meet the expectations. But deep down, something always felt off. There was this quiet discomfort you couldn't shake, a subtle emptiness that lingered beneath the surface. And then, that soft inner whisper, "This isn't your place." That feeling was never a flaw. It wasn't weakness. It was your intuition speaking clearly. It was your soul, gently urging you to come home, to return to who you really are, to that part of you that never gave in, that never stopped glowing, even if the world tried to dim your light. And it was right there, in the discomfort, in the uncertainty, in that haunting sense of not quite belonging, that your real transformation began. Because souls like yours, they don't awaken in ease. They're shaped in chaos, in doubt, in the kind of pain that demands you look inward, not outward. And when you finally turned toward yourself, something shifted. You stopped chasing answers in the outside world. You no longer needed anyone to confirm what your heart already knew. You began to find safety within your own presence. You became your own anchor, your own light in the dark, your own calm in the storm. And from that space, something beautiful emerged. The things that once broke you began to break you open. The parts of you that once felt separate began to create connection. The confusion that once clouded your path started revealing deeper truth. Because once a soul learns how to be at peace with itself, it stops fearing its own light. And that's the turning point, when everything starts to feel different. Being different no longer hurts. Instead, you begin to honor it. You realize you weren't meant to disappear into the crowd. You were meant to grow, to expand beyond limits. You weren't here to follow someone else's footsteps. You came to leave your own. To walk a path that never existed until you took that first step. And slowly, the need to be understood by everyone fades. Instead, you begin to draw in those who see you, not with their eyes, but with their soul. Because true connection isn't built on appearances, it's built on energy, on resonance. And when you raise your own frequency, the world around you begins to rise with you. That's one of the quiet miracles of a special soul. It awakens others simply by being. You don't have to shout or make grand gestures to create real change in the world. Sometimes, it's in the way you look at someone, the way you truly listen, the way you simply show up as yourself. That alone is enough to bring light into places that once only knew darkness. But not everyone can do that. Because to reach this place, you had to fall first. You had to break open. You had to face questions that most people are too afraid to even whisper. And still, you didn't get stuck in your pain. You made a choice to move through it, to turn that pain into wisdom, into compassion, into something the world needs more of. It becomes a strength that doesn't shout, but stands quietly, unshakably tall. The ones who've walked through their own private hell, fully awake, are often the ones who return with the deepest humility. They don't feel the need to prove anything anymore. They no longer push to be seen, because they know who they are. And that kind of truth, even when it's never spoken out loud, is unmistakable. It's felt deeply. Your soul is special because it refuses to settle for simply surviving. It wants more. It wants to live. Fully. Honestly. With depth. With meaning. And that's exactly why anything less, anything fake or surface level, feels unbearably heavy now. Small talk that goes nowhere. Connections that don't resonate. Goals that come from the outside, not your soul. Those things no longer belong in your journey, not because you feel superior, but because you've finally learned to protect your energy. You've come to respect your own frequency. And the moment you start showing up as your full self, no filters, no masks, life begins to meet you differently. You stop chasing. You stop trying to prove anything or earn your worth. Instead, you begin to draw in what matches your essence, what truly aligns with who you are. And you release, without clinging, what you once held onto so tightly. Because now, you understand, nothing real ever needs to be forced. And what's meant for you, it can never truly be lost. Where you are now, it's no longer about fitting in. It's about living in truth. About being fully present, with yourself, with your life, with this moment. Peace. And in that stillness, something quiet yet deeply profound begins to stir within you. You begin to make peace with your past. Not by erasing it, but by honoring it, seeing it now for what it truly was, sacred ground. The very soil that helped shape your awakening. You start to forgive the things that once caused you pain. Not by pretending they didn't hurt, but by truly understanding them. By seeing them through the lens of compassion. Gratitude begins to grow inside you, not just for the beautiful moments, but for the struggles too. For the experiences that made you stronger, wiser, more deeply human. Your soul is special, profoundly so. Because it made the rare and courageous choice to wake up in a world that so often chooses to stay asleep. Your soul never settled for the surface. It was always pulled, almost instinctively, toward what's essential. And yes, that path has often felt lonely. But that loneliness? It was never a punishment. It was preparation. A sacred pause. A quiet space where the world's noise faded, so you could finally hear the one voice that truly mattered, your own. Now you see it clearly. Everything you felt, those moments that seemed too much, weren't overreactions. They were signs of your sensitivity. And your intensity? That wasn't something to carry with shame. It was a guide. A compass pointing you toward truths others couldn't sense. Even the way you love, so deeply, so fully, so differently, isn't a flaw. It's a gift. That kind of love, the way you love, is exactly what this world is starving for. So don't change. Don't shrink. Don't dim your light just to make others more comfortable. Don't hide who you are. The world is already full of imitations. But your soul is irreplaceable. When a soul truly begins to awaken, it's not some grand explosion of fireworks. It's not a dramatic moment of instant enlightenment. It's not even loud. No, it's quiet, subtle, almost invisible to the outside world. But inside, it's profoundly transformational. It's like all the forgotten, scattered, or hidden parts of you begin to remember their way back to one another. Slowly, gently, they start to come home. And when that happens, something inside clicks, something that feels like it's been waiting your whole life. And in that moment, everything shifts. You realize you can't go back. You can't live the same way. You can't even pretend to engage in the same empty conversations anymore. You can't stay in jobs that drain your spirit. You can't keep holding on to connections that only exist out of routine. As your soul awakens, it becomes more selective, not out of pride, but out of a deep and honest need to protect its energy. You begin to understand you weren't put here to be exhausted. You were meant to express, to expand, to thrive, fully, freely, unapologetically. And often, it's the most extraordinary souls who carry the deepest scars. Not because they deserve the pain, but because they had to walk through it. They had to move through the weight of it all, to remember their true nature. Some truths can only be uncovered in darkness. Some wisdom only rises when the world you once relied on crumbles at your feet. Because it's in that moment, when there's nothing left to cling to, that you finally realize you were what you were searching for all along. Everything you were longing for had always lived inside you, quietly, patiently, just waiting to be acknowledged. And with that realization, your perspective shifts. You begin to see life through entirely new eyes. What once looked like chaos now feels like movement, necessary, intentional. What once felt like loss now carries the feeling of freedom. You begin to trust the unfolding of things, even if you don't have all the answers. You stop chasing what chooses to walk away. You stop begging for what refuses to flow. There's a quiet wisdom awakening within you now, one that gently leads your steps. And even when clarity isn't there, your soul still knows. And somehow, that's enough. The modern world will often ask you to be logical, efficient, predictable. But your soul doesn't follow straight lines or ticking clocks. It doesn't march, it flows. It breathes in cycles. It dances in spirals. It speaks in symbols, in feelings, in subtle nudges. And its language? Intuition. When you stop fighting that rhythm, when you let your soul be what it truly is, everything starts to come into focus. Not easier, but truer. With time, you begin to see that real fulfillment doesn't come from checking the boxes the world hands you. It comes from listening, really listening, to that quiet voice within. The one that speaks only in stillness. And though no one else may hear it, that whisper transforms everything. It shifts how you walk through the world, how you make decisions, how you create, and how you love. Because your soul, your very special soul, didn't come here to be understood by everyone. Your soul didn't come here to win approval. It came to remind you that you don't need it to be whole, to be enough, to be fully you. The most powerful transformation that comes with having a special soul isn't about what you build on the outside. It's about what begins to bloom within. There comes a moment, a quiet, sacred moment, when you realize that true evolution isn't measured by trophies, titles, or applause. It's measured by how deeply you've learned to sit with yourself, by how gently you speak to yourself when no one else is listening, by how you hold yourself steady when there's no one there to catch you, by how fiercely you stay true to your path, even when it disappoints others. But here's the thing, this kind of inner loyalty doesn't just appear one day. It's forged through trial and error. Through all those moments when you abandoned yourself just to be accepted, to be loved, to not lose what little you thought you had. But a soul like yours, a special soul, can only stay away from its truth for so long. Because sooner or later, it always finds its way back home. Your soul can wander. It can try to distract itself. It can even lose its way for years, caught in the noise, drifting far from its center. But sooner or later, the moment arrives, the one you can't run from. The moment where you simply can't lie to yourself anymore. And when that moment hits, everything begins to shift. You stop chasing the things that once consumed you. You start to see that many of your goals were never really yours. That some of your so-called achievements were just masks you wore. That certain relationships were just places to hide, safe spaces keeping you from facing the truth within. And yes, at first it hurts. Everything you built on a borrowed identity begins to fall apart. And in the rubble, you feel hollow, lost, uncertain. But within that quiet collapse, something flickers to life. A tiny, almost imperceptible spark. It's small, almost too quiet to notice at first. But it's real. So real you can't ignore it. That tiny spark is your soul, whispering, "Remember who you are?" And from that deeply personal space, you begin to rebuild. But this time, it's different. You're not rebuilding to prove anything. Not to please others. Not to impress the world. You rebuild simply to be. To be fully yourself, with all that comes with it. Your shadows and your light. Your contradictions and your clarity. Your truth. And as you walk further down this path of coming home to yourself, something shifts, quietly, but powerfully. You stop living with the pressure to be understood. Instead, you begin to live with a peace that comes from understanding yourself. And from that inner calm, life begins to unfold in a new way. More real. More present. More you. You start paying closer attention to what you consume, to the words you speak, to the energy you give and receive. You learn to set boundaries, not as walls to keep others out, but as acts of love to protect your peace. And then you realize, solitude isn't the punishment you once feared. It's sacred. It's where your soul finds its power, where your creativity takes root, where your intuition becomes clear and sharp. Because once you've learned to sit with yourself in silence, everything begins to shift. You no longer fear the quiet. You no longer accept the bare minimum and call it love. You no longer chase validation to feel like you matter. And from this new way of being, this deeper way of living within yourself, you begin to create a very different kind of life. Your choices no longer come from pressure or fear. They come from something quieter, but undeniably real, your inner compass. You begin to feel what's right for you and what isn't. You don't need to explain it or justify it with logic. You feel it in your body, in your energy, in the quiet knowing of your soul. And yes, this may make you misunderstood by some, but it also makes you free. Free from the noise of conditioning. Free from trying to meet expectations that were never yours to begin with. Free to live in a way that's honest, grounded, and true. And in that freedom, everything starts to fall into place. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you finally stop needing it to be. You've come to understand that even chaos holds a kind of beauty. That loss, as painful as it is, often carries gifts you couldn't see at first. And that every experience, especially the hardest ones, has been a teacher quietly guiding you back to your center. As you keep walking this path of reconnection, things start to shift, not because you force them, but because they naturally begin to realign. Your priorities change. Your focus deepens. Not because you become someone else, but because you finally become more yourself. Now, your life isn't shaped by the world's expectations. It's shaped by your soul, ready, willing, and unafraid to express itself fully. What once felt urgent no longer holds power over you. The thoughts that used to steal your sleep barely graze your awareness now. It's not that you've stopped caring. It's not indifference. It's clarity. You've realized that so much of your suffering came from trying to control things that were never yours to carry in the first place. And from this clearer, more grounded place within yourself, you begin to let go. You release the urge to fix everything. You stop clinging to the need for all the answers. You lay down the weight of responsibilities that were never truly yours. And in that release, a gentle lightness begins to rise. Not because life has suddenly become easy, but because you're no longer holding it all together out of fear or out of the exhausting need to keep everyone else comfortable. You start to trust. Trust that everything unfolds in its own time. That what's meant to stay will stay. And what's meant to go will leave when its purpose is complete. You stop resisting change. You stop chasing after attention that was never meant for you. You stop trying to explain things that were never meant to be understood by everyone. Because now you know, you don't have to fight for what's already yours by nature. Your peace. your truth, your path. And in the heart of that realization, something beautiful begins to unfold. Time itself feels different. You're no longer in a hurry. You're no longer racing towards someone else's definition of success. Instead, you begin to find beauty in what's simple, in quiet moments, in the sacred stillness life offers when you slow down enough to receive it. What once seemed boring now feels like sanctuary. And everything you once searched for out there, validation, love, meaning, now rises gently from within. Because now you've discovered something essential. The more you give to yourself, the less you depend on a world that never really knew how to give you what you needed. And as the days go by, that connection within you only grows deeper. It starts to show up in everything. In how you speak, in how you move through the world, in how fully you listen to others. You no longer feel the pressure to have all the answers. Your presence is enough. You begin to see people as they are. No masks, no filters, no judgment. And in that space of honesty, your authenticity becomes your language. And without effort, without force, your energy begins to transform every space you enter. You begin to notice that your presence carries weight. Even when you speak very little, your calm energy speaks volumes. Your stillness says what words never could. And the way you truly see others, without judgment, without labels, creates something rare. A space where people feel safe enough to breathe, to let their guard down, even just a little. But this isn't because you think you're above anyone. It's because you've been in the dark. You didn't run from it. You didn't numb yourself or escape it. You stayed. You faced it. You let it teach you. And eventually, you came back carrying light. And that quiet, lived light, is one of the greatest gifts a special soul can offer the world. You've gained something rare, the ability to return from the abyss carrying a message. Not everyone can do that. Many run. Many distract themselves. Many numb the pain or pretend it was never there. But you chose to go through it. And because you did, now you can stand beside someone without trying to fix or control them. Understand them deeply, without needing to prove you're right. Love them without needing to possess. You can guide without pushing. Support without expectation. Because you first learned to do all of that with yourself. And that's why now, what you offer is real. You're no longer trying to rescue everyone. You're no longer desperate to be seen or validated. You simply walk in alignment with what you feel, with what you are. Quietly, powerfully, authentically. And that, in itself, is enough. Those who resonate with your energy will naturally draw closer. And those who don't, they'll continue along their own journey. And you'll be at peace with both. Because your goal is no longer to belong everywhere. It's to live in harmony with yourself. That's when it finally clicks. Your sensitivity was never a weakness. It was a gift the world didn't know how to interpret. Your craving for depth? Not a flaw. It was your soul's quiet way of asking for something more, something real. And your discomfort around the shallow or surface level? That wasn't judgment. It was a clear sign. You weren't born to settle for the obvious. You were born to go beyond. Beyond the surface. Beyond the noise. Beyond what most people ever dared to see. You were never meant to live like most people. To settle for what doesn't move you. And no, not everyone will understand. Some will say you're too much. Others might think you're imagining it all. But that's okay. Because you no longer need to explain yourself. You've made peace with being different. And instead of shrinking back, now, you honor that difference. Because within it lives your essence. Your truth. Your quiet, undeniable power. And if something in you has felt this message deeply, if a part of you knows this wasn't an accident, then maybe the time has come. The time to stop hiding. The time to remember who you really are. And to finally let the world see it. It's time. Time to honor your sensitivity, not as something to hide, but as a strength. To finally see your uniqueness not as a weight, but as the gift it's always been. The world doesn't need more perfection or performance. It needs presence. It needs awakened souls, just like yours. So if this message has stirred something in you, if it's awakened a truth your soul has always known, then take this as your sign. Keep walking this path with us. Subscribe to the channel, and join us as we continue to explore the sacred space where the mind, the soul, and consciousness come together